Well, there's all categories of employer when it comes to heavy equipment, the construction industry being a big part, both union and non-union construction companies. Definitely your higher end wages and pay for equipment operators. Demand is very good. We have many companies that are utilizing our services to hire graduates coming out of our programs from across the country.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. Today I'm joined by John Klabacka of Associated Training Services in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. This is Fine Homebuilding contributing editor and production manager at TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwant. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. So John, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it.
So tell us a bit about your background and the work you do at Associated Training Services.
Sure. So we're a family organization. Our father, my two brothers, and I are currently the owners and managers of the business. Our father started the business originally in the late 50s, originally as a truck driving school. And since then, we've diversified into heavy equipment operation, crane operation, training and certification, horizontal directional drilling, rigging, and signal person programs are also some of the things that we do. But I'm the CEO and president of Associated Training Services and ATS Specialized, which are the two entities that offer the heavy equipment training, crane training, the rigging, signal person, and horizontal directional drilling. And then our truck driver training program and entity is Diesel Truck Driver Training School. But I'm responsible for the management of Associated Training Services and ATS Specialized. My primary duties, or the majority of my day, I spend with our Specialized Training Division, which is business to business, where we deliver training to employers and organizations throughout the country at their site or ours. And then our Associated Training Services entity offers beginner level training programs to individual consumers in heavy equipment, crane, the directional drilling, and the other programs that we offer.
So like you said, you guys have a lot of different training programs, and I think anyone who's ever done any traveling in the Midwest and driven on 151 has seen your big diesel driving signs and your trucks driving around with the training signs on them. But give us an overview of the heavy equipment operator program. What types of equipment do you guys offer? Is this a zero experience required kind of training?
So Associated Training Services offers two beginner level heavy equipment operator programs. Level one, backhoes, wheel loaders, skid loaders, off-road dump trucks, and telehandlers or rough terrain forklifts. Level two is bulldozers, scrapers, motor graders, and excavators. These are beginner level programs, no experience required. We have students that come from all over the country. About 90% of our student body for our beginner level programs are from out of state. We also have a dormitory that we own that our students that come from out of state stay in while they're here. The two heavy equipment programs are 3 weeks in length, Monday through Friday, so 6 weeks if you go through both levels. A few other subjects that are not specific to operating the equipment that are also included in those programs are site layout, civil blueprints, lasers, grade reading, and things that would pertain to laying out a site, knowing where cuts and fills are, how to read elevations, how to read site plans, and so on.
So how are those courses structured? Are they in a classroom setting, or do you have a yard where people can go out and actually learn to drive the equipment in real world situations?
Sure. So about 40% classroom, 60% field. We built a new classroom building for ATS in 2016. We've got 7 or 8 classrooms in that building, kind of in our back 40 back there. We've got about 30 acres set aside for all the equipment operation. Our whole campus right here is about 50 acres. The other sections are the CDL program, the truck lot and the truck yards, and then our crane lot is the other major field area. We own about 100 pieces of equipment total between heavy equipment, cranes, and trucks. About 30 cranes in our crane lot, about 40 pieces of heavy equipment, excavation equipment. We've got a couple of good-sized pole barns with dirt floors in them, so our equipment goes in the pole barns in the wintertime at night, so heated facilities to keep our equipment warm. We also use those barns for our horizontal directional drilling course in the wintertime, so we've always got ground that's not frozen. But yeah, there's a lot of area out there, and we're lucky to have it, and it's very useful for what we're doing here.
Explain what the horizontal drilling is, because I think unless you've worked in the big time commercial construction industry, you've probably never come across that.
So it's a huge part of the infrastructure building industry in the U.S. right now, primarily for fiber that is being expanded for internet connectivity. If you see or if you're aware of any fiber projects, it's 90% chance you're going to see horizontal directional drills on those job sites. The basic concept is you're drilling horizontally. You kind of start at an angle, but then you can steer the drill rods in different directions, up, down, left, right. And you can send a drill rod through the ground, underground for up to, I'm going to say, 500 to 1,000 feet. You can go under roads. You can go under rivers. You can bypass utilities. The efficiency of drilling for underground utilities is by far much greater than trenching. So you've seen a fairly good size shift in underground utilities going to drilling versus trenching. You're not destroying any of the ground above the borehole, but it's more complicated. It requires more expertise when you're operating the equipment than, say, just running a trencher. So we're teaching our people how to operate the drill. We've got a couple Vermeer medium-sized drills. And then the other part of that occupation or industry is you track the drill head. There's a transmitter in the drill head that's in front of that bore that can be tracked with electronics. It's transmitting a signal. So the person above ground has an electronic device that can tell you exactly where that drill head is, what elevation, and precisely where it is geographically. So that the drill head tracker is one of the parts of that team of drilling. And we teach both of those along with some other subjects that pertain to drilling in that program.
So it sounds like it's a sort of twofold job when you're running one of those pieces of equipment. There's the running of the actual equipment, and then I'm sure there's the heavy computerized portion of it that you have to be familiar with, but that's all training that you provide on that piece of equipment?
That's correct. There's a computer on the machine itself that controls most of the functions of the the drill rod and the drill head, and gives the operator all of the information needed to understand where the drill is, where the drill rod is, how much drill rod has been extended into the bore, how many drill rod parts, or I forget the name they call that. The drill rod is a piece of about, each piece is about 12 to 15 feet long. And as the rod gets driven through the ground, there's a mechanism that loads another rod in, screws it into the rod in front of that, and continues to do so that you can continue to make progress in that bore.
Is that a trend that you're seeing across all equipment operation, where some of these pieces of equipment are becoming much more computerized, where the operator has to balance that running a computerized system within running the or operating the piece of equipment?
I would say yes to that. You've got the GPS component in excavation, where grade control, I guess, is another term that is used for that. We do not teach grade control or GPS with our heavy equipment programs. It's strictly manual operation. But in the industry, you're seeing a shift towards more computerized grade control heavy equipment. That's definitely something that'll become a major part of the industry over time. The horizontal directional drills definitely very computerized, and they've been that way for quite some time. That's a pretty critical part of being able to perform that type of work. Cranes also, you've got what's called a load moment indicator on a crane that tracks the different functions of the crane, the boom angle, the weight of the load, the capacity of the crane as that load gets moved either in and out or up or down. Those are becoming more and more sophisticated and more common. All new cranes will have a pretty complicated load moment indicator or computer system that regulates the operation of that crane, and most importantly, will prevent that crane from overloading and consequently tipping over or causing a load to fall or become detached from the crane. So the computers in cranes nowadays are pretty sophisticated. It's hard for operators to make an error in a newer crane with computer systems they have now.
So thinking about the regular heavy equipment operating program, what career opportunities are there out there for graduates? Are there big companies looking to hire a lot of people that can run backhoes and bulldozers, or is it still a little bit more of a localized career opportunity?
Well, there's all categories of employer when it comes to heavy equipment, the construction industry being a big part, both union and non-union construction companies. All the different utility companies, private and public, great opportunities for heavy equipment operators, Army Corps of Engineers, government such as municipal, county, road maintenance crews, government such as forestry, national parks, all the different park systems throughout the U.S. We do a lot of specialized training for different government agencies like that involve heavy equipment. We've established relationships with maybe 1,000 different employers or organizations throughout the U.S. that we do regular specialized training for now. Maybe a third to a half of those in heavy equipment. The other half to 60 to 70% would be crane related, crane or rigging. But we do a lot of specialized training for different organizations now with heavy equipment. A lot of government, some unions, such as IBW, Labor's Union, would be a couple examples. One other, the steel erectors. I can't think of their name now.
Yeah, the iron workers, right?
Iron workers. Yeah, we've done mostly crane for the iron workers. 4 or 5 locals throughout the U.S. that we've done for the iron workers.
So you offer that crane operator training and certification as a standalone program away from the rest of the heavy equipment. Do you then specialize further into individual types of cranes, or can you get a broader education on operating cranes at ATS?
So our beginner level programs are a more comprehensive curriculum that covers a variety of subjects related to crane operation. That's one of the advantages of those programs over what we would term as a prep and test course, which is designed specifically for the student to learn what's on the CCO certification written tests, and we perform the practical exam for those individuals during that prep and test course. Those prep and test courses are specific to crane type. There's 5 or 6 different crane types that CCO offers certification in. You have 2 types of mobile crane, your small and large hydraulic mobile crane. You've got the lattice boom crane. You've got articulated boom cranes, tower cranes, and digger derricks are also a type of equipment that we teach that an individual can get certified in through CCO. And then CCO also offers rigger and signal person certification, lift director, and crane inspector. All of these certifications being ANSI accredited certifications that are recognized by OSHA and required by OSHA if the crane operator is doing construction work. So any crane operator doing work in the construction industry is required to be certified, and CCO is about 90% of the crane certifications in the U.S. right now.
When you have the students out in your back 40, as you put it, with the different kinds of cranes, what are some of the learning exercises they run through with the crane? What do you have set up as far as real world circumstances for them to work in?
Sure. So first would be crane site and site inspection and crane setup. So before you set up a crane, you want to make sure you've got ground conditions that are proper, the density of the ground that you're sitting on, whether it's gravel or pavement. If it's not gravel or pavement, you need to make sure that the composition of the ground or soil is sufficient to meet your needs. Part of crane site setup is the outriggers that come out of the crane that stabilize it, bring the wheels off the ground. So basically you're sitting on a solid static structure with those outriggers. Under those outriggers go cribbing or pads that disperse the weight from those outrigger pads, and there's certain ratios of size when it comes to your cribbing and the outriggers. So we go over all that with the students. We talk about leveling the crane. We talk about inspecting all the critical components on the crane before operating, wire rope, hydraulics, hoses, things like that need to be looked at on a daily basis, fluid levels, tires, would be some of the quick items that I can think of when it comes to site and crane setup. We do a couple things with our crane students, such as reeving a load block, which is a component that is used at the end of the wire rope to create multiple parts of line that increase the lifting capacity of the crane. We do some lattice boom assembly and disassembly where we'll take a couple of sections of lattice boom, take them apart, put them back together. We do a little practicing with pick and carry, they call it, where you pick a load and then move it by traveling with the crane. So pick and carry. Blind picks, which would be picking a load when you can't see the load and then maneuvering that load based on your signal person's signals. So being able to maneuver a load when you can't see it by following the directions of the signal person. Everybody in our crane programs learn all the signaling, all the different hand signals and voice signals, what that signal actually means, such as hoist up, boom left, boom right, hoist down. Those are also required for crane operator certification. You have to be able to identify or comprehend what the signal person's signals are, hand signals.
What are the career prospects for crane operators? I remember being in commercial construction and always hearing that they were pretty much the top dogs on the pay scale. Is that pretty much true across the board?
Definitely your higher end wages and pay for equipment operators. Demand is very good. We have many companies that are utilizing our services to hire graduates coming out of our programs from across the country. The certification that our graduates get is definitely a door opener, as it's required by OSHA. But we have contacts with many hundreds of companies throughout the U.S. that hire graduates coming out of all of our programs that are in our career services database and regularly hire people from us.
How do those companies typically structure their heavy equipment operations? Is it like they employ the operator and then they're renting the pieces of equipment, or somebody else is supplying that equipment and erecting like a tower crane for a project, and then the contractor will have their own crane operators that will then operate that? Or do the operators work directly for somebody who owns and erects the equipment?
I would say about 80 to 90% of all of the equipment and operators are owned by the employer, by the actual contractor, and the operators are employees of that contractor. It's a pretty minor portion of the industry where there would be arrangements or contracts that are different than that.
So once somebody graduates your program and they latch on with a large regional contractor, that's their career path then, to stick with that contractor, be their crane operator, and then operate the crane specific to that company's typical work.
Correct. My son's a pretty good example. He's about 30 right now. The last job he's had, he's recently moved back to Wisconsin, but just for example, Gerber Construction in the Salt Lake City area, he had about 3 or 4 years of experience before he got that job. But pretty major size contractor installing sewer treatment installations in the Salt Lake City area. He got hired primarily because he was certified. He had the experience, which helped him a lot, the previous experience, but he was the only certified crane operator that worked for that company. And they're about 100 employees size company, maybe
Wow.
100 to 150. And I'm not sure why they didn't have more certified crane operators, but
Right.
they didn't.
It seems like a low number for a company if they've got 100 people.
But it was fortunate for him because he had the CCO certification, and he was running a brand new 200-ton Klabacka lattice boom crane within a few weeks after starting with this company. He also ran a lot of heavy equipment. They have all the different categories of excavation equipment along with the cranes, and he had experience and training from us in both excavation and cranes. But he was very successful there. He enjoyed it, and worked there for about 5 years, and then got homesick, decided he was coming back to Wisconsin. So early this year, he moved back here, and he's working for a construction contractor here in Madison now.
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit there with that he got to move into that pretty significant piece of equipment. But when you have students in your class, what do you tell them about the responsibility that they have as an operator inside of a piece of equipment like that for the safety of the people around them and also their employer's value of that equipment?
Right. Well, one of the things that always impressed me about my son, his name is Griffin, was how safe he was operating that. I was just nearly flabbergasted that, because I know him from living with him for 25 to 30 years. And to see him standing on this 200-ton lattice crane, knowing that he was operating that, pulling, caps off of these huge sewer treatment plants that might have weighed, who knows, 40 to 50,000 pounds, concrete discs that sit on top of these sewer treatment tanks. And I was just always like, just to the point of, I can't even believe that he's doing this. But the one thing he always told me was how safe he was. He would never let any of his coworkers convince him to do anything with that crane that he knew was not safe. And that was the one thing that I was so proud of him for doing, because the scary thing about people in these industries and our graduates that go out and get into these cranes is their supervisors and these superintendents many times will tell them to do something that is not safe. And it's up to the crane operator to decide whether it's safe or not. And that takes a lot of courage to stand up to your supervisor and tell him, no, I'm not doing that because it's not safe. But he did it, and he got a lot of respect from his coworkers and his supervisors. And he had an excellent safety record while he worked there. Zero accidents.
Yeah, there's a lot of high-profile crane accidents that have happened in the last 20 or 30 years. Even when I was an apprentice, we got loads of videos of different crane collapses, and there was actually one this morning where we're taping here in late July, and there was a crane collapse near Midtown Manhattan at Hudson Yards, where the crane actually started on fire and the boom fell. You talk a little bit about the risks that can happen just in operating a crane that can lead to something like that happening?
Sure. So I would say the two most, well, I'm going to just throw a few examples out there. There's 2 or 3 areas that I know are always somewhat common. Overloading the crane. So there's a load chart that is designed for every crane, specific to that exact crane by serial number. That load or capacity chart's mounted on that crane and should never be operated without the operator completely understanding that capacity chart. That's pretty complicated too. That's one of the things that's the most difficult for our students to learn. And it's a big chunk of the CCO written exams, the load charts. They call them specialty exams. There's different exams for each of the different crane types. So overloading a crane, which means you put too much weight on it, you extend the boom out too far, leverage takes that crane down. Who knows what happens after that? But those are the types of accidents that happen because cranes are overloaded. And that's operator error. If you don't understand your capacity chart, you need to know the weight of your load, where you can put that load based on the capacity chart of that crane. So that would be a common risk or cause of accident in crane operation. Bad setup. You set up a crane, you got some soft ground. Doesn't take much for that crane to come out of level. Once it's out of level, the load chart becomes obsolete. Anything can happen if the crane is not level and you got a load suspended when that crane becomes out of level. So good setup, good site prep, proper outrigger setup, cribbing, and so on would be another factor. Checking your equipment out. You got a wire rope with a bird cage, too many strands of wire that are busted on it. OSHA has regulations right down to how many wires can be broke on a piece of wire rope before it's got to be rejected. Understanding all the rejection criteria for all types of rigging, from the wire rope to the hook, the ball, and then the rigging that goes under the hook. That would be another common place that things get overlooked and accidents happen. I should say. Piece of rigging that doesn't have a tag on it, don't use it. People use it, rigging breaks, load comes down, people get hurt. So a lot of talk and discussion and teaching on proper rigging. Hardware, what's the right piece of hardware? Is it capable of handling the load? And then how to install that. Different types of hitches, different types of rigging, knots. There's a number of different hitches that come into play with synthetic slings or the different types of slings that are out there. We do a lot of teaching, and the students get a lot of learning on how to rig properly and what proper rigging is.
I met you because we contracted with you to put together a specialized training class for our carpentry team, because we were getting into some projects where we were going to be doing more telehandler work and more crane work. And you had our team out there for a day and a half. And one of the things that they brought back and gave us as feedback was they were blown away by the rigging and the amount of things that go into doing rigging properly, and being in a situation where they could get their hands on the rigging equipment in a way that it wasn't a live job site atmosphere with any kind of hurry up pressure, where they could really understand what you were just talking about with the different components of the rigging system and different things that they need to do as somebody on the ground who's working with an equipment operator. But what other classes like that are you able to put together for individual companies that even small ones like TDS benefit from?
Sure. It's just from A to Z, anything that we do, we can customize the length, the subject matter, the location. Obviously, if you want it done at your location, if it's a bigger group, it's probably going to be cheaper for you to do it at your location. But anything that we do, we can pick and choose a subject matter. We can decide how much depth we want to go into on that subject matter based on our discussion with the customer. And that's what we do. I mean, that's basically what I do all day long now, is talk to specialized customers about what they want, why they want it, how much they want, where they want it, what subject matter, and so on. And it's become a pretty big part of our business. It's about half of our business now versus our standardized programs.
Yeah, our lead carpenter who's running this new home project was the driving force behind getting our entire team trained in how to do hand signals and work safely around heavy equipment. And when I talked to him afterwards, he mentioned to me that where all of this came from was, he was on a project operating a telehandler, moving lumber up onto the second story of a new build. And he couldn't get the guy who was on the second story deck to actually tell him what to do. The guy was just kind of randomly pointing at things and then standing where he couldn't see him. And And he didn't want to have that happen on a new build where they're setting wall panels or roof trusses with a large crane, especially the site that we're working at for this new house. There's going to be some blind picks that are going to have to be done. And it's challenging for a young crew that hasn't worked around operators. But what other safety tips do you have for the listeners out there who don't normally work around heavy equipment, but every once in a while you're on a job where it's necessary?
Sure. Well, be alert at all times. Definitely. Most accidents are caused by complacency. People aren't watching what's going on around them. Be alert. Be visible to anybody operating a piece of equipment. Stay out of blind spots. Make eye contact with the operator as much as possible so they know where you are. Wear your PPE, vest, hard hat. Communicate whenever possible, however you can communicate, whether it's hand signals, voice, and just don't get complacent. When you're around heavy equipment, the risk is always there, and there are a lot of accidents and a lot of fatalities with heavy equipment. You really don't even want to know how many there are, and I've experienced some firsthand in my life, and it's always a very, very disheartening experience to know that somebody died and it could have been prevented. That's what you need to think about all the time.
It makes me think of growing up on the farm and running around while my dad was on a loader tractor and my mom grabbing me and saying, "You have to watch out for him. He is not watching out for you." And that's something that always stuck with me.
No doubt. That was good advice. Very good advice. Yeah.
So what do you think we need to do to get more young people interested in the building trades and specifically operating heavy equipment?
Well, you just have to inform people. We've been doing this for so long, and we talk to so many leads. Most people just can't believe how many leads we get. We probably talk to 2,000 people a month from all over the country, all different people. And we've been doing that for heavy equipment, where we've become national 30 to 35 years now, so hundreds of thousands of people. But, a lot of people just aren't aware that these careers are as prevalent or that
lucrative
and gratifying. When you talk to people, I was talking to one of our grads today who went through our crane programs about 5 years ago. And just to hear, he's sending his son here. He's a veteran. He's from Idaho. He's worked all over the country with every type of crane you can imagine for the last 5 years. His son's going to be here next month. But to listen to the satisfaction, the life satisfaction in this guy's voice today was why my job is so gratifying. But people that get into these industries, they realize how much they like it, and they make respectable wages. Some of them very good wages. I'm pretty sure this individual was probably in the six figures from what he told me he was doing. But six figures is, attainable for anybody that gets into these industries. And for people with minimal education, no real desire to go into administrative, academic, traditional college type occupations, it's really a great opportunity. And there's so many people like that need something like this. It makes our job quite enjoyable.
That's great stuff, John. Is there anything else that you want to pass on to the listeners? Any other advice or safety tips before we go?
Well, like I said, stay alert, keep your eyes open, your ears open, and be careful when you're in these industries and occupations. Be a team player, take pride in your work, and always try to produce a quality product.
That's great stuff, John. Thanks for taking the time to join me today, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us wherever you're listening. Helps others find our podcast. Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you very much, Ian. Have a great day.